The institution of slavery in medieval times was deeply influenced by the preceding Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had an extensive system of slavery, where individuals could be enslaved through capture in warfare, debt bondage, or by birth slavery. As the Roman Empire declined and gave way to medieval societies, the remnants of Roman slavery continued to shape the nature of servitude. The transition from Roman slavery to medieval forms of servitude was gradual and complex. With the collapse of centralized Roman authority, the power dynamics of the ancient world were disrupted. Local elites, including Germanic tribes and other conquerors, assumed control over territories once ruled by the Romans. These conquerors adopted and adapted elements of Roman law and social structures, including aspects of slavery. The barbarian invasions during the early medieval period contributed to the expansion of slavery in various regions. As Germanic tribes and other groups invaded and settled in Roman territories, they took captives as slaves from the conquered populations. The spoils of war often included men, women, and children who were subsequently sold into slavery. Moreover, the slave trade emerged as a significant economic activity during the medieval period. Slave markets and trade networks developed, facilitating the movement of enslaved individuals across regions. The Islamic world, for instance, had a thriving slave trade that connected the Mediterranean with North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. This trade involved capturing or purchasing slaves from various sources, including sub-Saharan Africa and Eastern Europe. The combination of barbarian invasions and the expansion of slave trade networks led to an increase in the number of slaves and the widespread practice of slavery throughout medieval societies. While these factors contributed to the rise of slavery in medieval times, it is important to note that different regions and societies had their unique dynamics and practices regarding slavery. The origins and forms of slavery varied across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, reflecting the diverse cultural, social, and economic contexts of the medieval world. Chattel slavery, also known as absolute slavery, was a prevalent form of servitude in medieval societies. In this system, individuals were considered the property of their owners and had no legal rights or protections. Chattel slaves were treated as commodities that could be bought, sold, inherited, and even traded as gifts. Enslavement in chattel slavery was often based on factors such as race, ethnicity, and social status. Slavery based on racial or ethnic origins existed in different regions, including the Arab slave trade in Africa, the Byzantine Empire's enslavement of Slavs, and the European enslavement of non-Christians during the Crusades. Serfdom was a distinct form of unfree labor that emerged during the medieval period. Serfs were tied to the land they worked for and were subject to the authority of their lords. They were not considered property like chattel slaves but were bound by hereditary obligations to provide labor and resources to their lords. Serfs were not allowed to leave the land or marry without the lord's permission. Their status was inheritable, meaning that they were born into serfdom and passed it on to their descendants. While serfs had some limited rights and protections under feudal law, they were still subjected to the will of their lords and often faced harsh working conditions and heavy burdens. Slavery within households and noble residences was another prevalent form of servitude in medieval times. Slaves served as domestic workers, performing various tasks such as cooking, cleaning, caregiving, and tending to the needs of their masters and their families. In some cases, enslaved individuals were also used as concubines or entertainers within these households. They were often valued for their beauty, skills, or talents, and their lives were subject to the whims and desires of their owners. Slavery played a role in military service and gladiatorial arenas during the medieval period. Enslaved individuals were sometimes conscripted into armies or employed as soldiers. These enslaved soldiers fought in wars, defending their owners' interests or serving the rulers of the time. In addition, gladiatorial combat, though less prominent than in ancient Rome, continued to exist in certain medieval societies. Enslaved individuals were forced to fight as gladiators for the entertainment of the masses, often in deadly contests that showcased their skill, strength, and endurance. It is important to note that the experiences of enslaved individuals varied widely, and the severity of their conditions depended on factors such as the region, the particular social context, and the specific practices of slavery within each society. Slavery was a multifaceted institution with different manifestations, reflecting the diverse nature of medieval societies. One of the significant impacts of slavery in medieval societies was its role in agricultural labor and economic exploitation. Slaves were widely used in agriculture, where they performed essential tasks such as planting, cultivating, harvesting, and tending to livestock. The agricultural sector heavily relied on enslaved labor for its productivity and profitability. Slavery allowed large landowners and aristocratic elites to amass extensive agricultural estates and accumulate wealth. Enslaved individuals were subjected to long hours of labor, often working under harsh conditions and receiving little to no compensation. The exploitation of enslaved labor contributed to the accumulation of wealth and the concentration of power among the ruling classes. The economic impact of slavery extended beyond the agricultural sector. Slave-produced goods, such as crops, textiles, and other commodities, formed a crucial part of local and international trade networks. Slavery played a significant role in shaping medieval economies, contributing to economic growth and the accumulation of wealth for slaveholders. Slavery was not limited to rural agricultural settings but also existed in urban centers during medieval times. Enslaved individuals in cities performed various tasks, including skilled labor and domestic services. They were employed in workshops, mines, construction sites, and households, contributing to the development and functioning of urban economies. Skilled slaves were highly valued for their expertise in areas such as metalworking, carpentry, masonry, weaving, and other crafts. They played a vital role in the production of goods and services, contributing to the economic prosperity of urban centers. The skills and knowledge of enslaved individuals were often passed down through generations, creating a distinct group of skilled enslaved laborers. Slavery in medieval societies reinforced existing social hierarchies and power structures. The ownership of slaves was associated with prestige, wealth, and social status. The ability to acquire, maintain, and control enslaved individuals demonstrated one's power and authority within the community. Slavery also played a role in defining social boundaries and reinforcing the distinctions between different groups within society. Slaves occupied the lowest rung of the social ladder, while freemen and nobility held higher positions. The ownership of slaves created a clear division between the enslaved and the free, emphasizing the power imbalance and the subjugation of the enslaved population. However, it is important to note that the social status of slaves was not entirely fixed or immutable. In some cases, slaves could gain their freedom through various means, such as manumission, military service, or marriage with a free person. These instances allowed for some social mobility and blurred the lines between enslaved and free individuals. The economic and social impacts of slavery in medieval societies were significant, shaping power dynamics, economic structures, and social relationships. Slavery's profound influence on these aspects of medieval life can still be seen in the legacy it left behind and its implications for subsequent periods of history. Medieval societies developed legal frameworks to regulate the institution of slavery. These legal systems varied across regions and were influenced by religious, cultural, and customary norms. Laws defined the rights and responsibilities of slaveholders and the treatment of enslaved individuals, although they often favored the interests of the slaveholding class. Justifications for slavery were multifaceted and often rooted in social, economic, and religious beliefs. Some arguments included the idea that certain groups were naturally inferior or born to serve others. Slavery was often seen as a means to maintain social order, economic stability, and the hierarchical structure of society. Legal and moral justifications for slavery were often intertwined, with religious doctrines and philosophies used to support or condemn the institution. Religious perspectives and ethical debates. Religious perspectives played a significant role in shaping attitudes towards slavery during the medieval period. Christianity, Islam, and other religious traditions had varying views on slavery, which influenced the treatment of enslaved individuals and the justification of their enslavement. Christianity, for instance, contained conflicting viewpoints on slavery. The Church condemned the enslavement of fellow Christians but allowed for the enslavement of non-Christians, particularly those captured during warfare or as a result of the slave trade. However, there were voices within the Church that criticized the institution of slavery and advocated for the humane treatment of slaves. Notable figures like St. Patrick and St. Augustine condemned certain forms of slavery and called for the fair treatment and liberation of enslaved individuals. Islamic societies, on the other hand, had their legal frameworks regarding slavery, derived from the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith. While Islam allowed for the institution of slavery, it also emphasized the ethical treatment of slaves and encouraged their emancipation through acts of kindness and charity. Ethical debates surrounding slavery existed within medieval societies as well. Some philosophers, theologians, and thinkers questioned the morality of slavery and its impact on human dignity. These debates often focused on the inherent worth and rights of all human beings, irrespective of their social status or origin. It is important to recognize that while there were dissenting voices and criticisms of slavery, the prevailing cultural norms and economic interests often perpetuated its existence and limited the scope of reform. Understanding the cultural perspectives on slavery in medieval times provides insight into the complexities of societal attitudes and the challenges faced by those advocating for change. These perspectives reflect the diverse and evolving beliefs, customs, and moral frameworks that shaped medieval society's views on slavery. Throughout the medieval period, there were instances of slave revolts and organized resistance movements by enslaved individuals. These acts of resistance were fueled by a desire for freedom, justice, and improved living conditions. While relatively rare, these uprisings demonstrated the determination and agency of enslaved individuals in challenging their oppressors. One notable example is the Zanj Rebellion in the 9th century, where enslaved East African laborers revolted against their Abbasid Caliphate rulers in southern Iraq. The rebellion lasted for many years and resulted in significant loss of life on both sides. Similarly, in the late 14th century, the Ciompi Rebellion in Florence, Italy, involved a revolt by textile workers, including many enslaved individuals, demanding better working conditions and higher wages. Resistance to slavery took various forms, including escape, sabotage, and acts of noncompliance. Enslaved individuals would sometimes flee their masters and seek refuge in remote areas or in communities that offered support and sanctuary. They would also engage in acts of sabotage, such as slowing down work, damaging property, or subtly undermining the operations of their masters. These acts of resistance served as reminders that enslaved individuals were not passive victims but active participants in their struggle for freedom. The decline and eventual abolition of slavery in medieval societies can be attributed to a combination of factors, including changing economic and social dynamics. As economies shifted and evolved, alternative labor systems emerged, reducing the dependence on slavery. The growth of urban centers and the rise of guild-based economies created opportunities for free labor and the development of skilled craftsmanship. As urbanization increased, the demand for skilled workers expanded, and the reliance on enslaved labor diminished. This shift was partly influenced by the rising merchant class, who preferred to employ skilled freemen rather than maintain large numbers of enslaved individuals. Additionally, changes in agricultural practices, such as the transition from large-scale estates to more diversified and decentralized forms of farming, reduced the need for extensive slave labor in rural areas. Technological advancements, such as the use of water mills and windmills, also contributed to increased efficiency in agricultural production, further reducing the demand for slave labor. Moreover, the influence of religious and philosophical ideas promoting the equality and inherent worth of all human beings began to challenge the foundations of slavery. The teachings of Christianity, Islam, and other religious and moral traditions emphasized compassion, justice, and the dignity of all individuals, regardless of their social status. These ideas provided a moral and ideological basis for questioning and challenging the institution of slavery. Over time, these changes in economic structures, social attitudes, and moral consciousness contributed to the gradual decline and eventual abolition of slavery in medieval societies. However, it is important to note that the process of abolition was often slow and uneven, and remnants of servitude persisted in various forms even after the formal end of slavery. The resistance and eventual abolition of slavery in medieval times were the result of complex interactions between economic, social, cultural, and ethical factors. The struggles and acts of resistance by enslaved individuals, combined with shifting economic structures and evolving cultural perspectives, gradually eroded the institution of slavery. The history of slavery in the medieval period serves as a reminder of the resilience and agency of oppressed individuals and the importance of recognizing and challenging systems of oppression. It also highlights the ongoing struggle for freedom, justice, and equality that continues to shape our societies today. By studying and understanding the resistance and abolition of slavery in medieval times, we can draw valuable lessons and insights to inform our efforts in creating a more just and inclusive world. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more videos.